I am so excited to spend the next few minutes with Sonia. I've known Sonia for quite a few years now, Sonia. I think, I don't know, maybe five.
Yeah.
Have learned a ton from her. So I'm excited all of you will join us and also be getting to learn from her today on a very important topic that doesn't get talked about. So if you're new to this series, this is Missing Chapters. I will be your host today. And Missing Chapters is a monthly webinar series that we do really to kind of highlight and capture the missing chapters from the handbook that we don't always talk about. And so this one in particular, I'm very interested in because it's very broad, but yet very specific. And I think there's going to be some really fun takeaways. So I'll be your host. I'm on the Nava team, been here for about a year and very excited to jump in. Sonia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Sonia. I have worked in HR for many years now. I moved from the UK to the US in 2013, working mainly for tech startups, building and scaling their HR function. I am currently an HR consultant supporting small businesses, but mainly supporting other HR consultants with their work and overload so that they don't burn out or, they have to turn work away. And then in my spare time, I like to write. And I am very close to finishing my nonfiction book, which is pretty much about not missing chapters, but the things that you don't see on your job description in HR or the things that people don't really talk about.
Which is very important, especially for a team that has to handle a lot. Um, which is why we're here to talk about something very specific in vendor relationships and how, teams of one or two can basically get the most out of these relationships and improve their productivity. So, with that being said, Sonia, I'd love to kick things off and really help us kind of set the tone for this concept because as we all know, and most of us on this call probably feel very much every day, many professionals feel like they have to do everything themselves. And oftentimes because everything's getting thrown on them and then they have to figure out and juggle. So how would you say we should be approaching this? Like, why do we think that um, we need to be more driven to get more out of our vendor relationships and partnerships and kind of let's kick it off. How do we start doing that?
I think, being in HR and been in HR for a long time, we are very wired to do everything and manage everything that's people related, to keep the wheels turning. I think it's really deep rooted in us to care for everybody. And sometimes that just translates to doing too much. It's not sustainable, it's not effective, and you just can't do it all. You'll eventually hit a wall or you'll burn out. And it also creates, I think, a little dependency. HR will go in and fix it. Don't worry, everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody's got it. And it's really hard to get out of that mindset because people get really comfortable and not complacent, but just comfortable with like the way things are going, right? If it's not broken, people don't fix it. And that mindset is hard to shift. So, you're so busy running at 100 miles an hour that you forget to ask potentially like valuable questions like where can I add value somewhere else when I'm doing something here? It's not about giving up control, it's about sharing the responsibility, empowering others. You shouldn't be the fixer of all things, you should be the enabler.
Mm.
Empowering I know probably I'll get questions on this, but like empowering employees to solve their own issues when it's appropriate. How many times do you have to tell people certain things? And, you're always the middleman. But
Mm.
HR's such a wide function, it's a business-wide function. So if you can partner with people to make things easier, whether that's vendors or internal teams or leadership to, just streamline things, processes instead of doing things manually, meeting up with brokers and exploring automation. You've just got to try and like take a step back, I think, and
Mhm.
just think about how you would Like, what is it you want to see? You know, if
Mm,
nobody's complaining, you're like, okay, it's great, everything's working well. But until you take a step back,
mm. Giving yourself permission to do that, to be
yeah,
like,
I
okay,
think
great.
so.
Yeah,
It's
to
just
just,
those old habits. It's
mm,
not really, you just get caught in the hamster wheel. I feel you get caught in that hamster wheel, and it's not until you know something else that you don't know what you have is broken.
mm.
People do you know me, I'll talk forever and I'll keep talking and you're
I
like all
love
these
it.
questions, you're like,
Yes,
okay.
yes, I love it. Well, let's,
It's
yeah, let's keep going because it's, you kind of set in the tone of like, okay, there's a lot of responsibility on HR. You were getting hit from all different directions, where C-suite, peers, employees, and you have to think, okay, what do I have accessible to us
yeah.
to take a step back and evaluate what results you want? What do you think are kind of like or even in your past experience, what's essentially something that you are like, okay, we need to go evaluate this partnership, or what are some kind of steps there that people on this call, people that'll be listening to afterwards will say, okay, yeah, do I jump to vendors first? Like, what are my resources to go leverage um, these partnerships to solve my problems, or just be more strategic?
I think, yeah, a little bit of both, right, at the end of the day, because I'll just take a slight step back if that's okay. Like
Yeah.
you have these systems, right? And they're quite, you start a new job, you may inherit an old, outdated system, right? And you don't realize what's possible out there. So, it's just potentially lack of knowledge, especially in a new job. You've got your predecessor, they've set up all the brokers, and you just jump in because everybody's okay with it and everything. And you do give it a try, but businesses evolve and systems, people like vendors and partnerships and brokers have their own system in play, and they work, but they're always making improvements as well, and you might miss out on that information. So just taking 5 minutes, I think, just to ask yourself, like, what would make your job easier, and
Mhm.
what solutions already exist, and asking the right questions, because you don't realize the power of leveraging your vendors if you don't ask the right questions.
Mhm. Sometimes you don't know what questions to ask.
Yeah, and
So,
people, that's the thing, right? People are like, oh, they fear the sales pitch. Are vendors just trying to sell me something? If I get on a phone with them, automation sounds expensive, like we've done things this way all the time.
mm.
And when is a good time to explore new solutions? Not 5 minutes, like 5 days before open enrollment, not a good time to explore, not a good time to explore things like that. But if you've got time to just take a minute, you could potentially be giving yourself an opportunity to take work off your plate by giving it to your vendor or your broker because you didn't realize that's something they could do.
Mm. When was that moment that you recognized the power of that relationship and leveraging those partnerships?
Oh, my aha moment. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
like when,
I,
yeah.
do you know what? And I don't know if I should say the word bamboo HR.
Oh, you can say whatever you want, Sonia. This is
I was
a
on the customer advisory board for Bamboo HR, and I think that is one of the best things people could do, like a vendor, definitely, is to have that, because you're on it for a time with other customers and clients, and you get to know the direct insights of like new features and talking to others about best practices, and people will tell you what they're doing differently. And it really opened my eyes to see what was possible. And there was one participant who was talking about she had changed her benefits, and it changed to, I can't remember what it was, but it changed to a system that she was explaining to everybody. It was like, okay, this is new. It's not the normal thing I would expect from a broker. But she said that they told her how they spent the commission from the carriers. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. Is that something that is possible? And I went back to my old brokers, and I had a great relationship with them, but I went back to them and I was like, hey, what do you do with, the commission that you, and they just laughed at me. And I'm like, oh, is it funny? I don't find it funny. I want to know, like, I understand you do a job and you get a commission from the carriers, and that's great. What do you do with it? How do you spend that money? Is it to put back in the systems? Is it to? And I just didn't get an answer. And I was like, okay, that's a one black mark for me. But that was my aha moment that I'm like, I know there's better things out there. I love the relationship, but I know with my growing workforce, and it was growing, we were in a complete growth stage at that. I needed to do something else because it wasn't practical, effective, or efficient for me to keep having to call them and saying, hey, where are we at with this? This person's having problems with this. What can you do to help them? Because, they're not getting an answer from the carrier here, or they're not getting here. And it's like,
Hmm.
it was just something that just kept going on and on and on and on. And, until I'd looked at other alternatives, and I was like, oh my gosh, that they've got an app and they've got this and they can help this and there's a chat feature. And it's like, I do not have to keep asking the same questions for the same thing over and over again. It's all there in their phone, which is
Mhm.
the biggest thing as well, having it at their fingertips so they don't have to go in looking for stuff that, the hunt and pecking thing that you get a lot. We didn't even have an intranet. So it was like, how do we make this great? Like, I haven't got
Mhm.
an intranet where I can just upload a bunch of documents or frequently asked questions. What can that vendor
Hmm.
give me that will help me do my job?
So it's like asking, like simply just asking
Yeah.
basic questions, like you just said, like, hey, what more can I expect? Or can you tell me more about this? I think leaning on them is what I'm hearing from you, of like leaning on them to not just provide a service, but be a partner.
Yes. Yes.
And it's
Partner
okay.
with
It's
them.
okay to do that. Cause I think, from your experience, you're just sharing, it's like sometimes we're hesitant to take the time to say, hey, no, what about this? What about this? In your case, the commissions, you're just simply curious and they didn't show up in a way that you wanted in a partner, which is too bad.
It's
But
tough. It's tough for people on this end, right? When you're in HR, you're like, I don't want to ask those maybe awkward questions, which could be deemed as awkward, but like they're working for you, right? You are the
yes.
client and they're working for you. You don't have to do it all, but
Mm,
you are just I'm not saying everybody has a fixed mindset. Absolutely not, 100%. But you just get caught in that moment all the time, and it's like you're doing benefits and you're doing. I mean, we all know when you're an HR professional, you have so many hats, so many wheels turning at the same time that you just sometimes get caught where you're looking at everything from a narrow lens, and it's like
mm,
automation, right? We talk about having partnerships, but also that vendor, that partnership, they can tell you like, this is the product that you use, this is the platform that we use. Did you know it could do this? Or did you know it did
mm,
this? And you're
mm.
like, no, because we had it, we started using it 3 years ago, and I haven't had time to keep up with like the
Yeah.
changes and everything else.
Mm. Would you say that's some of the biggest misconceptions with HR teams about vendor partnerships, that they should be relying on them to educate them on the new stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I loved listening to I did an RFP because, you know, the decisions to change brokers are not always within HR. It's usually potentially you have stakeholders that you have to appease, especially when there's money involved because benefits are not cheap. So getting those people involved early, and I did an RFP because they don't want to just see one thing, but they also want to see solutions. They don't want you to go with problems and saying these aren't working out for us anymore. It's too much hard work. There's a lot of effort on our end. I'm thinking of moving. In my experience, the people I've worked with don't want to hear that. They want to, what is it we can do to make it better for everybody? So,
Mm.
I reached out to alternative vendors and says, I'll talk about brokers for this thing. Um, and I was like, show me what you've got. And it doesn't take 5 minutes, it takes a short window of time just to hear them out and see what offerings they've got. And I was considerate. I went back to our current brokers and was like, this is, I took my journalist with me and, we sat there and we're like, okay. And they did their presentation as they usually do. And I sat there and I was like, okay, these are the questions I've got for you. Can it do this? No. Can you do this? No. Can you do this? No. Well, what can you do? Well, this is what you get. And it's like nothing has changed over the last 3 or 4 years. And, I understand that, but our needs had completely changed. We'd grown from 50 to 120 people in no time. Our needs to go from small to large group, if we're talking health benefits, different things happen all the time. And they couldn't come up with a match to what I could get elsewhere. So, I learned very quickly, like, we got to change. And just presenting those additional plus factors to the leadership team was just a great opportunity to say, right, not only is it going to save us time, which is a win-win because we can spend time doing our things, but for the employees, they don't have to do this anymore. They don't have to do that anymore. It's all there for them.
That's so great because I think oftentimes, I think you mentioned it before, we don't take the time to like make sure our current partners are, we would hire them again. Like we would still pick them again. And in this example, you're like going through that exercise and giving yourself time and space to do that. Because just because you picked a partner, 3 years ago, 4 years, last year, they should continue to earn your business. And I think, um, in this example, you're definitely put their feet to the fire of like, hey, we hired you 3 years ago. If we were to hire you again today, like we need you to step up. And I think it's asking them to do that, asking them to provide what's new, asking them to resell themselves,
Yeah,
essentially.
I think asking the right questions is the main thing, right? It's one thing going, but like, can they keep up with your company growth? Are they proactively updating their offerings? What is it that they can do back there, even if you're looking at like a then and now situation?
Mm-hmm.
Are they the biggest thing I think is the responsive aspects of like queries and the support that they can provide to you, but also to your employees, because
Mm,
benefits are very personal, right? People, when they're having concerns with anything, like when I talk vendor partnerships, it could be healthcare, it could be 401k, it could be an
mm,
HRIS system. But benefits and 401k are very personal to people, right? They're putting their money into that. So it's very personal. And they don't always want to come to speak to HR about, I need to stop my 401k anymore. And, I can't afford to put any money aside for that. How do I do that? They don't always want to ask HR that. But having a vendor that can be approachable for questions like that, where there's not judgment, but there's no judgment because they don't know these people, so I think that is a real like win-win when you're looking at those relationships and partnerships. And just what happens, say you do change, then you've got to look at like what happens after the implementation. They've said what they can do, and can they, walk the talk? Is that the right way around? Yeah. Can they
Yeah,
walk the dog?
yeah.
You know, and that's the thing, you're taking a chance, right? Do I change things and can they do what they said they're gonna do? And
Mm,
for the best part, yeah, of course.
mhm.
But it doesn't always mean bigger is better, right? So you think, okay, I've grown, so now I'm gonna go from an itty bitty HRIS system that nobody's ever heard of, or one that's broken for us, but we're going to keep going, and I don't want to spend a fortune. And then they see all the big bright lights flashing of the ADPs and the work days of the world, and that doesn't always mean bigger is better, right? You have to do a little bit of research to see what is best for you and what's going to work for your company. Yeah, you're going to be scaling. Yes, you want things to improve all the time. That's what I loved about the advocacy group, because a lot of really good companies will listen to their customers. They'll allow their customers to, put in suggestions like, I really want this to do, or they'll custom
Mm.
make a field for you if you need to do something better. And, you know, there's always something, but you just have to like ask.
But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask.
Don't be
Okay, so some of you on this call are probably trying to think, okay, I'm here learning from one of the greats about vendor relationships, and you're probably wondering, okay, am I leveraging my own vendor resources? So, Sonia, what are some common signs that HR isn't fully using their vendor relationships and their resources? Just for
And
those,
yeah,
yeah, like help us personalize this a little bit before we get into more of the specifics.
for me, it was the repetitive tasks, right? Why am I doing this over and over and over again? Why do I have to keep going? And it wasn't until I'd asked a question, it's like, you can automate that. And it's like, really? I can, like, I don't have to do that like 25 times a day. I don't have to go in and, double check and triple check. And, all systems are different, right? So most people, I think, these days will use onboarding as an automated thing. If I go back a few years, and I'm not going back many years, especially when you join a small company, when you're like maybe a one-man band and you join the company and they're like bringing you in to like build the HR function, like myself, onboarding was like, here's a bunch of paperwork, go fill it in. And it's like, okay. And then what do you do with that? You like, do I have to file it? Do I have to scan it and file it? So, onboarding all those things like policies and documents, put the onus on the new hire to fill out the profiles, and stop the manual paperwork, people. Stop. There's no need.
Please, if you're doing
There's,
something manual, reach out to Sonia.
don't
She's
do
going to
it.
counsel you on stop doing it.
But having that information, I know people are human and they do make mistakes. So you do have to go in and check things, like when people are putting their social security numbers in. People, believe me, do make that mistake, and that can be a problem. But the sooner you realize it, the easier it can be. But for me, it's the workflows. Like when you're doing performance management, it's having, not chasing from like self-assessments to manager assessments, and then what do we do with that and how do we deal with that? It's like having that whole workflow, the
Mhm.
self-assessment, the manager assessment, what the responses are, having the reminders, and having a system tell you like the next steps. All I want to do is not get stressed out about performance management, because I know a lot of people, it's a big chunk
Mm,
of time, and people do complain about the time, but mainly the time is on the other end for the employee and the manager to do their part. But for HR, it
mhm.
should be easy enough to set a process in the system where you can just go, okay, we're going to release it on this day. Okay, everybody's going to get one of these, and then everybody's going to get one of these at this time. And at the end, we're going to have this, and I can pull a report and I can see who's behind and who I need to nudge, and they get those reminders. And just having things that will work for you, I would say, is probably my top three things there that people should automate. It's not always easy, like I say, because people don't always have the money, but there are always ways that you can get access to different things that might help.
Or even, sounds like even asking your current vendor relationships what they
Yeah,
have. Like, okay,
pick
if
up
you're
the
not
phone,
doing,
pick up,
yeah.
don't be shy, right? If you don't ask, you don't know. Um, a great
So
example I
automate, so if
thought of,
someone's not automating something, they should definitely think through what they should
definitely,
automate. Like if it's so manual, like if you're doing something many times throughout, sounds like the day, maybe the week, or at a particular point in time, like performance management, think about how you can automate it, call your vendor.
yeah.
Okay.
Call your vendor. Don't, like I said, don't be shy. And it's not just making it easier for HR, it's making it easier for the employee too. Doing open enrollment on an app or online is just so much easier. My husband, I mean, he doesn't really, hope he can't hear me. Um,
He's not on, no.
when it's his open enrollment, he's like, I need your help to go through this. And I'm like, it's all there, like black and white on
Mm,
the screen. And all you got to do is click next and choose. And that's all you have to do. And click here and it pops up like these are your options with the different plans and you can see them all side by side and just
mm,
just making it easier. I mean, I'm talking years ago, it's here's a piece of paper and go ahead and decide. And
mm,
it's tough when you're spending your own money on things. You want the best, but you want to be able to understand it. And yeah, you will still get people asking questions, but if you've got a good vendor and a good partnership with your vendors, then they'll do it for you. They'll take over the open enrollment. They'll take the call with all the employees and they'll be open to Q&A, and you can just sit back and enjoy the moment. You don't see. I was thinking about it the other day, like how would I take it out of context of HR just to give an example? And then I thought of bloggers and influencers, right? And I thought, how do they have time to do that? And I'm like, they don't go in every 5 minutes and keep loading. They use a platform and like preload everything. I'd heard on a podcast somebody say, it was a writing podcast, and the woman said, I'm a real big YouTube person. Like I release all these videos, and she said, but don't tell anybody, but I record them all on one day and I work, like 10 hours flat and I get it done and then I'm done for like the month and a half. And I'm like,
mm.
that's it. That's what we got to do.
Set it for, yeah. Yes. Find those unique ways to automate it, set it and forget it. And that's one less thing for you to spend brain power on. Okay, well, so here I am thinking about this. I'm like, okay, these are great suggestions. You're doing something manual, try to figure out how to automate it with one of your partners you already have. Let's say a vendor has already sold you on something. So you needed something, they've been doing X for so many years. How do you hold them accountable to ensure they're still a right fit? Um, and I know you talked a little bit about this before about, switching vendors, but maybe you have an example you could walk, maybe someone on this call is thinking about that too. Like, how do I expect more if I'm not getting that? First of all, how do I hold them accountable? And then what do I do to hold them accountable? Or even like push them to do more? Because I think people are willing, if they're truly a good partner, I think they'd be willing to do more for you. You mentioned asking questions. Do you have an example of how to switch vendors? What are some of the questions to ask,
Yeah,
etc.?
I will think of it as I'm talking, but yeah, it's pretty much, are they meeting your needs? Like, what is it your, I mean, you could ask your audience, right? Do you ask the employees? Do you do a quick pulse check with the employees? Like, if we were going to be doing this, what would you like to see? Everybody has a different idea of what benefits they want to receive. Not everybody wants, fun happy hours. They would rather have,
It's
they
true
would
though,
rather have something
100%.
else,
Yeah.
right? It's not everybody's thing. And it's like, well, what benefits are we going to give our employees? I would rather have a chair massage over a happy hour. What would
Hmm.
you rather have? So are you making those decisions for your employees, or are you asking them the questions? Like, you can't please everybody, right? absolutely 100%. You will never please everybody, but you could be open to ideas of what people would like to see and how you could fit that in with your
Mm.
current budget, or, what can we do to make it better? And I mean, there is no reason. I'll use Nava as a great example. In my previous company, we used Nava. I didn't even realize that you got a kickback on something. And it's like, these are all these fun things that you can do with that
Oh.
money. And it's like, there's yoga sessions, there's therapy sessions, there's, this and that, and all these things. And it's like, I didn't know that. Even
Mm.
I didn't know that because I hadn't remembered from the beginning of all the great things. And you just sometimes you just forget, right? So
Yeah, you
have
can't
have
remember
a
everything. Like that's ridiculous.
you can't, and you can't keep up with everything when you're trying to manage all different vendor relationships. You might have 5 or 6 different platforms that you're using. It's like that would be a full-time job for me. So how would I do that? But have those check-in points with them. It's really worth the investment, I think, to have that relationship with them, because at the end of the day, then you're keeping up with them about how they're delivering value to meet your needs. And if they're not doing that, then I'd say that's the time to step back and sort of either renegotiate the terms or switch.
Mhm.
Because with
Good advice.
AI coming in now, and all these companies are starting to use, and it's like people just still want the human element. And I get that,
Mhm.
right? Is it going to be a human at the end of the conversation, or is it going to be AI? And I have a client, I won't tell names, obviously, and I was on their chat feature yesterday asking a question. And I asked the question, I'd gone to the chat feature and I asked the question, and they're like, yeah, to do this, you need to go to the blue dot in the corner and ask the question to the help. And I'm like, this is what I am doing. And they're like, yeah, to get the answer you want, go to the blue dot in the corner. And I'm like, I am in the blue
Same.
dot in the corner. And, it's like, I want to speak to a person. I want to speak to a person. But having those options I did get the option to speak to a person, even though it was via chat, which is great because I think these chat features are really good at getting you quick results, because the service is also really important on the end of at the end of the day, it's that support that you're
Mhm.
getting. Before I had a relationship where I was emailing, I was having to call and leave
Mhm.
messages. Getting an answer like within a second with the support of chat is really important. But you also need to keep up with people that, you do want to speak to a human at the end of the day. But AI is not going to replace a human, but a human using AI will possibly replace you if you're not going to get on board. That's a whole different conversation.
Stay tuned,
Stay
everyone.
tuned.
We will
Yeah.
have another session about AI. But actually, now that you bring up AI, the AI powered HR tools are evolving really fast. And, vendor or not, what do you think HR leaders should embrace or be cautious about as you evaluate your vendor, or you have a vendor today that has AI capabilities?
It's I mean, AI can free up time for you to focus on other things like strategy, and it can, but like I see so many things on LinkedIn about hiring. It's a brutal market at the moment, don't get me wrong, and you're just getting caught with AI filtering out resumes, and it's horrible. I don't like it at all. But if you're using it in a way that it can automate tasks, then without having to impact people on a different thing, it can spit out training programs for you, right? You might, I'm not saying you should use it for the human element, but it can take tasks away from you spending time and hours. I have spent so many hours putting together PowerPoint presentations, like just for a training program. Like, our managers need this, and it's like, okay, I'll put together a training program. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist. We were talking about that earlier, and I'm like, I'll tweak it again, and I'll tweak it again, and I'm tweaking again. It's like, stop. why am I not using AI to like, if I use the right words, it will spit at it, but at least it'll give me the bare bones. At least then I can go, okay, now I can manipulate it to suit my needs, and it's done. And it's freed up now a whole half day that I would
Hmm.
spend stressing about putting it together because now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
Do you
ask
feel
AI
like
how to make a paper airplane, right?
you feel
Ask it
like
anything.
yeah, honestly, and especially like those free AI tools, I am curious about your opinion of like as you are evaluating a vendor, like if a vendor has AI capability, is that does that rank it higher in your evaluation? Like, should you penalize it? How should you use AI to evaluate your current vendors and maybe future vendors? Like, where does that fit in your overall kind of checklist of evaluation?
I think for me personally, I like it because I know it has great capabilities, but I would have to understand what they use it for. So
Mm,
it doesn't take away that cold. No, I'm not saying it's cold because
yeah,
it doesn't have to be, but just
sure.
giving people that personal touch is, they might be giving me the personal touch being like the direct person in contact with the vendor, but like, is it going to give everybody else the same personal touch? I don't want my employees to have to suffer the blue dot in the corner question.
Yeah.
It's so weird
You
because like
used
my
it, yeah.
computer's there and I can see the blue dot in the corner because the screen behind it is still there. And it's like that blue dot.
Uh,
But that blue dot is my friend most of the time because when you're learning a new system, like
mm,
talked earlier, you can't know it all. Most vendors will have learning opportunities, right? They're going to put together learning programs for your employees. It's like, this is how you use the new system. Great. This is how you do the new performance review process. Everybody has to spell it out for people because in your head as an HR person how it works, but they don't. So you have to, you know, give them the tools and the resources to be able to work for them. So, maybe ask the employees, like, what would make their lives a little simpler? I know that
mhm.
went kind of off the AI thing, but it really does depend what they use it for, because I would still want that nice touch of like the human element.
Having a balance, because I think that's a lot of, as you're trying to make a decision, especially if you're evaluating your full tech stack and you're like, okay, how, applying some of the principles you've taught us today of like, okay, what are you doing manually? Sometimes AI can help with that, but I like how you're thinking about it in the sense of, well, what are you using AI for? Will it really help me simplify some of these manual tasks so that it frees me up to do, some more bigger impact strategy? And if it's solving for that, then yes, AI is potentially a great option for selecting a vendor or keeping a vendor. Back to like our whole point of this conversation of like, hey, how can we leverage vendors to make the most out of, most out of our productivity and just being more strategic? Sometimes AI can help free
Yeah.
that up.
Yeah. I mean, the thing
And
is, right, humans make mistakes, right? And we all make mistakes even when we're evaluating vendors, we can make mistakes, right? So we got to try and avoid it, and asking those questions ahead of time, like what can they do to help you? What can they do to help your employees? How is it going to be easier for them? And they could potentially transform the work that you do to be more effective, right? They can not stop you being reactive, because I think we're always reactive, right? We don't know
oh
what's going to
yeah.
happen in the next 10 minutes, let
Yeah.
alone tomorrow, right? You have this beautiful to-do list at the end of every night, like me, if you do. And like in the morning, the gremlins have gone in and chewed it up and spat it out. And it's like, okay, none of that is going to get done today because it's not that important. And now I've got all these emergency tasks that I have to deal with. So, you don't want to be focusing on mundane tasks that you can potentially automate if you ask the right questions. And you could go from reactive to more strategic. if you manage that vendor relationship.
Mm,
Like I mean, like we said, I've known you for a long time, right? And even in your previous role, you were with a different company, but we had still a good relationship because, it makes all the difference.
it really does. And just having a good relationship then allows you to hold each other accountable or feel comfortable asking those questions that might
Yeah.
feel a
And
little
although the
awkward.
lovely Anna works in Park City, I did get to meet her once face to face when I
I
went there.
know we have met
So,
in person.
and isn't that, and that is just, if you could do that as well, I mean, it's great to chat with people over the Zoom and or what other tools you may use for meetings, but when you can actually meet up with them, and that's another thing I think vendors do really well, is like they will visit, you know,
Mm,
long gone are the days now, hopefully with COVID still lurking, but out the way that people meet people face to face, and it's not always practical, but
mm,
if you can do that, I think it is like it makes a lot of difference too.
mm.
But I mean, I enjoy chatting with you over Zoom, so
Yeah, so yeah, well, especially since we've already met in person. So is that something you should expect from a relationship? Is that like one of those small changes an HR person could ask their vendor to improve the relationship? Or what are some of those little things you would recommend um, people listening to expect from your broker? Like meet in person, help us automate. What are some other ideas?
I think the icing on the cake is the meeting in person because then you've got that relatable experience, but it's not essential for
Okay.
everybody's all
Okay.
over the place, right? At the end of the day, those
Sure.
little things for me are like receiving updates, like how are
Mm,
things moving forward for you? What's the changes the carrier's making? Because like they're not the best in the world at telling you changes because they're such a big organization. But if you've got a broker who's that your friend in between, right? They're that
mm,
person that's in between. If they're the ones that are doing their job in a way that is going to help you, you've got your middleman. You've got your middleman.
mm,
Keep me updated on the changes. Keep me updated what the brokers are doing, the carriers are doing. What is it I'm going to get from you in addition to what you already give me? You give us so much, but you know, is there things that we could be doing better? What do your other clients do? Ask that question like, what are you doing with your other clients? You must have other clients that are the same size as my group, potentially a different industry or even the same industry. What do they do? Do they have the same system? Are they doing something differently? And I really do think I learned a lot asking those questions, like what do other people do? Because, I didn't realize I wasn't doing half the things that I could be doing
mm.
by just asking that one question.
Oh, that's such a great question. Because then it just gives you ideas and puts them in the seat of like helping be a strategic partner, which is
Yes.
what you want to increase that productivity.
Yes.
So, okay, I know we're kind of coming to the end. I know there's probably a few questions. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We can answer them live, put Sonia in the hot seat. And by the way, I've gone off script today, so I've already put Sonia in the hot seat.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know where we were going with any of those.
Just kidding. But I do have I can't help but think, you know, as we sit here and as we are thinking about how to be more productive, how do we be more strategic HR leaders? What is the role that the HR should play, as you're evaluating maybe your vendor support and what you might need or might need to change, either in consolidating those vendor options or resources, or maybe expanding. What's the role HR leaders should play in advocating for that with their leadership team?
Yeah, get them in early, right? Get them in early if they are part of the decision making and you want to make changes, like before you've even gone there, sow that seed. There are I can use a live example. You know, I did that. And then it wasn't, it's you're going from small group to large group. So you're
Mm,
changing carriers and you're making all these big decisions. And, you now got 3 plans as opposed to 6 plans. And that is like something that is out of your control. And
Mm,
having to explain that is really difficult, especially when they're like, well, are these people going to get this, this, and this? And it's like, no, they're going to get different, right? They might not get this, but they're going to get this. So sowing that seed really early. And if you've got a good relationship with your broker and your vendor, like they will willingly, happily talk to the stakeholders directly, especially they'll jump on a call. I have
mm,
had that been done for me. And, you know, some companies are probably like, you know, oh, HR can deal with that. That's fine. You know, it's their responsibility. And if they're like that, then they should have no say in like if they're leaving it up to you. But I feel most stakeholders will want to know what's going on, especially when it's spending money. So just get them in early and don't be closed to looking at alternatives, you know, because if you can show them that you are making the right choice from moving from A to B because of all these great things that they're offering, then you're halfway to getting them on side. You know, and sometimes it's
mm,
not about the money. I it's not always about the money. It's what can we do better for our employees? What can we,
mm,
you know, how can we make it better? Like this is what we offered them last year. Is what we're offering them this year any better? You know, on the core, we
mm.
all know costs go up. And it's like, do you
Especially in
pass
benefit.
on
Yeah.
those
Hmm.
costs? Do you pass on the cost? Does the company suck it up? You know, there's lots of questions that you'd have to ask, but my main personal question would be like I want to try and improve on things year on year. So what can I do to do that? And I couldn't do that. I couldn't answer those questions without having that perfect relationship with the people who run the platforms that I was using.
To be that partner. I think that's a great, back to your like evaluating, what kind of questions or things you can have your current vendor partnerships do. I like the idea of like having them come and get FaceTime with your leadership team. Use them as a resource to bring your leadership team along. I like that idea a lot because they are they should be the experts. And if you're evaluating the needs of, what your employees want and you're leveraging your vendor partners to then pitch or bring your C team along, then you're kind of tackling it from
Yeah,
both
it's that
sides.
he said, she said thing, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Chinese whispers, right? By the time if I'm collecting all the information and I'm going through three people to give them the chances are it's changed.
Yeah.
It's changed by the time it's got there. But that's what good brokers do, that they play the middleman so well that they can answer the questions directly. Like, because
Mm,
the chances are the stakeholders probably have different questions than the questions you may ask because
yeah.
they're probably more concerned about the
Mm.
money or, what does it do here and what does it do there? And I would be like, what can you do for me to make it better for me? But how can you make it better for the employee?
Mhm.
And focus on that because going full circle to where we were at the beginning, we're wired that way to be the people pleaser and to help them. We're wired to make sure that they have everything they need. And if it means running on a hamster wheel at 100 miles an hour, we tend to do that and we don't have to do
We don't
that.
want, yeah. That's if that's in no, yeah. If it's giving you any motivation on this call, it's to not do that anymore. Rely on your current vendors to help you do that. So, okay, that actually brings me to probably the last question, and hopefully we'll see a few come in. But Sonia, what would you say are those common mistakes that HR makes that they don't benefit from these vendor relationships or where they're evaluating new relationships? Because like my heart hurts when I hear HR just like jumping through all of these hoops, running on the hamster wheel. Like that is a perfect metaphor for I'm sure what a lot of our listeners are feeling. So how do we help them get off? What are those little mistakes we should all just like be asking ourselves? to
Don't,
stop doing. Yeah, stop doing
yeah,
this.
get off the hamster
Yeah,
wheel.
get off the.
Not always easy, not always easy. I think um, just take a step back, pick up the phone, have a conversation, see what they can do for you. It doesn't cost to have a conversation. At least have a conversation. I still think it's about always lack of knowledge, what they can do for you. I am 100% touch something like sure that if you did that, you would learn something new, like you didn't realize you could have. I 100% sure that if you called one of your vendors today and said, okay, well, this isn't what can you do for me that I'm not doing already? There would be something. But I think inheriting old, outdated systems is one of the things that happens. You don't like to rock the boat, especially in a new job. You don't want to rock the boat because you've just started, and you know, everybody has a preferred vendor. They do in every job they go to. When I start a new job, I judge the vendors by the blessing of great vendors that I've had working with before. And I know that, not necessarily they're going to be as good as what I expected, but that's why people change all the time. So especially, like I said, especially in that new job, you don't always accept what your predecessor has done. I mean, try it by all means. And if it works, great. But still consider that the businesses are evolving, they're hiring you, so the businesses are evolving, the systems and processes shouldn't stay the same. They have to evolve with the company. And if it means changing and optimizing different tools to make your job easier and to make the lives of the employees easier, then just be open to doing that.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, Sonia, as always, pleasure to have you on to talk to you, learn from you, and I'm super excited for your book. Like, go follow Sonia on LinkedIn so you can be first to know about her book and also learn from her. She has really good content on LinkedIn. And so thank you, Sonia. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you. And join the community, people, because like the NAV.
Yes.
Oh, you do that bit. Go on.
Oh, no, please. No, you do it. You're way better. You're way.
Join the Nava community on Slack. Uh, they do such a great job. I mean, even when you have vendor questions, ask the community because you're not just getting my response, you're getting a bunch of other people who've gone through similar experiences and they can really, really help you. And there is also, I think it's once a month we meet up, the community meets up, and there's
Yeah.
a few of us, and
Mhm.
Nava are great because they will give you coffee. You have to go to Starbucks, but they will give you coffee to join the call. But it's so nice to just ask those questions that you can't necessarily ask in a more open environment. It's more off-grid, a comfortable environment that's provided. So if you're not going to do anything, do that.
Absolutely. Great call, because if you have vendor questions or other questions, like Sonia said, meetups are once a month and they're very casual. But our next missing chapters will be April 23rd, and we are going to talk all about moving beyond transactional leadership. So come learn the secrets about that in the chapter that's missing in your HR handbook. And if you want to see the other missing chapter segments, please go to this website. It's under our events section on Nava, and you can listen to past recordings. Or if you want to listen to Sonia and I again, or share with a friend, you can do that there. So as always, thank you so much for being here and joining us. Join the Slack community. We've linked it out here. It's free to do so, and come join us at one of our other events, whether it's a webinar or coffee, and we can talk about other HR fun stuff. So thank you again. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.